Marcellus fired his driver, Jason, at 6:15 p.m., furious over his habitual tardiness. Just hours later, the news broke. A tragic car accident on the highway claimed Jason's life at 6:05 p.m. A cold chill gripped Marcellus as he watched the footage, his heart racing with guilt and regret. He had no idea that his decision had stolen a father from his young daughter and a friend from those who loved him. My name is Marcellus. I never thought my choice would lead to such devastating consequences. The news anchor's voice faded into a blur, drowning beneath the weight of my despair. I sat there, frozen in front of the television, unable to process the magnitude of what had just unfolded. Jackson was gone, and I was the one who had severed the only lifeline he had. I thought of his daughter, the way she must have clung to hope that her father would come home, only to be met with an unthinkable void. My hands trembled as I clutched the armrest of the sofa, my mind racing through memories of Jackson, the countless times he had gone above and beyond for our family, the jokes he shared with Maya, and his unwavering patience in the face of my occasional brusqueness. I had taken his loyalty for granted, as though it were a mere convenience, a service to be rendered at my whim. Evelyn entered the room, her expression shifting from concern to horror as she pieced together the situation. She must have seen the news report. "Marcellus, what happened? I heard the accident was awful," she said, her voice trembling. I looked into her eyes, searching for a way to communicate the tumult of emotions swirling inside me. But how could I explain the depths of my guilt? Instead, I forced myself to speak, though the words felt lodged in my throat like stones. "I fired Jackson," I confessed, the weight of my admission hanging heavy in the air. A pained look crossed Evelyn's face, and I felt the sting of her disappointment. "I was upset about him being late. I didn't think—" My voice trailed off as I realized how hollow my justification sounded. I hadn't thought about the reasons behind his tardiness, nor had I considered the impact my words could have on his life. Evelyn stepped closer, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. "Marcellus, that doesn't make it any easier. You know how much he cared for us, especially for Maya." Her voice broke slightly, and I could see the tears welling in her eyes. I felt myself slipping further into despair, suffocated by the realization that my actions had caused such pain to the people I loved. "We need to tell Maya," Evelyn said quietly, and I could see the serious resolve in her expression. I nodded, though a part of me wanted to hide away from the reality I had created. The thought of facing Maya, of seeing her bright spirit shattered by the news of Jackson's death, filled me with fearful dread. I couldn't bear the idea of being the one to crush her dreams, to destroy her innocent admiration of someone who had been more than just a driver. He had been a mentor, a friend, and a role model. Evelyn led the way to Maya's room, her footsteps slow and deliberate. I followed, each step feeling tired than the last. I knew that my failure would not only affect me, but would also leave a mark on my daughter. I had always prided myself on being a good father, yet in this moment, I felt like a stranger to my own family. We knocked softly, and Maya's voice chimed in from inside, bright and cheerful. a stark contrast to the storm brewing within me. "Come in." As the door opened, the warmth of her smile hit me like a wave, washing over my guilt momentarily. She was sprawled on her bed, a book in hand, her hair messy from absent-mindedly running her fingers through it while reading. "Hey, Dad, you won't believe the history project I'm working on. Jackson said he'd help me with the research this weekend," she exclaimed. Her enthusiasm was infectious, but it only deepened my anguish as I prepared to shatter her joy. "Maya, we need to talk," I said, my voice cracking under the weight of my emotions. Her smile faded, and the look of concern that replaced it made my heart ache. She could sense something was off, and that only made it harder for me to find the right words. Evelyn took a seat on the edge of Maya's bed, her hand brushing the back of our daughter's head in a comforting gesture. "Sweetheart, it's about Jackson," she began gently. I watched as realization dawned on Maya's face, the words hanging in the air like a dark cloud, and I felt my chest tighten. "Is he okay?" she asked, her voice small, as though she were afraid of the answer. I opened my mouth, but the words refused to come out, and all I could do was shake my head, the sorrow in my chest threatening to spill over. "No, honey," Evelyn continued softly. "There was an accident. Jackson, he didn't make it." As the words left her lips, I felt the air leave the room. Maya's face crumpled, and in that moment, I saw the innocence shatter, replaced by grief too profound for her young heart to bear. "No, no, that can't be true," she cried, the book falling from her hands to the floor with a thud that echoed in the silence of the room. I felt as if the ground had shifted beneath me, that the very foundations of our family had been, surprised, rocked to the core. I reached out, wanting to comfort her, but I felt paralyzed by my own guilt. How could I console her when I had been the one to cast Jackson aside? Maya's tears flowed freely now, and her cries pierced through me like arrows, each one striking a part of my heart that I hadn't even known existed. I wanted to tell her that it wasn't her fault, that she didn't deserve this pain, but the weight of my own culpability suffocated my words. I sat there, powerless, watching the little girl I loved crumble, and I knew then that my journey of redemption was just beginning. In the days that followed, the weight of my decision pressed heavily upon me. Each morning, I would wake up to find the empty space in the garage where Jackson's car used to sit, a stark reminder of my rash choice. The silence that enveloped our home felt suffocating, a thick fog of guilt and regret that seemed to cling to the walls. I watched Evelyn move through our house, her eyes clouded with a sadness that mirrored my own. She had always been the anchor in our lives, the one who held everything together, and now I could see the strain my actions had placed upon her. Maya, usually so energetic and filled with youthful energy, had retreated into herself. Her laughter, which once echoed through the halls, had been replaced by an uncomfortable quietness. It broke my heart to see her so affected, her bright spirit dimmed by the tragedy that had struck our family. I could feel the walls closing in around me, and the realization of how I had failed her and Jackson weighed heavily on my soul. I needed to make things right, but I had no idea how to start. One evening, as I sat in my study, staring blankly at the financial reports that had once consumed my thoughts, I heard a soft knock on the door. It was Evelyn, her expression both gentle and concerned. She stepped inside, a flicker of hope in her eyes. "Marcellus, we need to talk about Maya. She's not coping well," she said quietly, her voice almost breaking. "I think we should take her to Jackson's family. They must be hurting too, and maybe it would help her to connect with them." I nodded, even though my heart sank at the thought. Jackson had been more than just a driver. He was a part of our family. I had taken that away from both Maya and his family. And now it felt like a chasm had opened between us and the people who had once shared in our daily lives. "You're right," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "We should go. It's the least we can do." The following day, Evelyn and I took Maya to Jackson's home. The drive felt interminable, with every mile filled with unspoken dread. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, my mind racing with memories of Jackson, the way he would crack jokes during long drives, how he would patiently teach Maya about cars, igniting her fascination with mechanics. I glanced at my daughter in the back seat, her eyes lost in thought, a mixture of sorrow and surprised confusion dancing across her face. I wished I could reach out and shield her from this pain, but I knew that was impossible. When we arrived at Jackson's house, I noticed a small gathering of his family and friends outside, their faces marked with sad grief. As we approached, I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. Jackson's mother, a kind woman whose warmth had always made me feel welcome, looked up, her eyes red-rimmed and hollow. She recognized us instantly, and her expression shifted from surprised to something that resembled anger. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice trembling. I could feel Evelyn's grip tighten on my arm as she took a step forward. I'm so sorry," I managed to stammer, the words tumbling out of me like stones. "I never should have fired him. He was late and I let my anger get the better of me." I felt the tears welling up, but I fought them back. "I've come to express my deepest condolences. Jackson was an incredible man, and I was foolish to let him go." Her gaze softened slightly, yet the pain was palpable. "It's too late for apologies, Mr. Marcellus," she replied, her voice barely above a sad whisper. "You don't know what you've taken from us." Maya stood frozen, her eyes fearful as she took in the scene, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. I could see her processing the harsh reality of losing someone she admired so much. I wanted to shield her from the truth, but I knew I had to let her experience this moment to understand the gravity of what had happened. Jackson's mother stepped back, her grief morphing into a protective instinct for her family. I could feel the tension mounting, and I turned to Evelyn, whose eyes mirrored my own despair. She took a step forward, her gentle nature shining through even in the face of anger. "We're here for Maya," she said softly, trying to bridge the chasm between our families. "She loved Jackson dearly, and we want to support you in any way we can." Just then, a figure stepped forward. It was Jackson's younger brother, a quiet boy I had met once or twice. His expression was a mix of hurt and bewilderment, and he addressed Maya directly. "I wish I could say something that would make it better," he said, his voice shaky. Jackson cared about you. He talked about you all the time. He would have done anything for you." Maya's eyes shimmered with unshed tears, her heart breaking at the realization that Jackson's love for her hadn't diminished. "I just wish he were here," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I stood there, a bystander to the pain I had inflicted, knowing I couldn't undo what had been done. The families intertwined in their grief, a communal sorrow that enveloped us all. I felt utterly desperate, caught in a cycle of regret, but I knew that I had to try to make amends. As the sun began to set, casting a golden hue over the gathering, I felt a flicker of determination ignite within me. I would not let Jackson's legacy fade. I would honor his memory and strive to do better. I turned to Evelyn and Maya, my confident resolve strengthened. This was just the beginning of my journey, a path towards healing, understanding, and ultimately forgiveness. In that moment, surrounded by pain yet filled with hopeful purpose, I vowed to myself that I would not only seek forgiveness from Jackson's family, but I would also strive to rebuild the trust with my own family, to be a better husband and father. This journey would be long and arduous, but I was confident, ready to take the first step. If you found this story compelling, subscribe for more heartfelt narratives that explore the complexities of human relationships and the power of redemption. As I sat in the dim light of the living room, the weight of my actions settled heavily on my chest. The news report replayed in my mind like a broken record, the details of Jackson's accident echoing painfully. The image of his smiling face, always bright and cheerful, flickered before my eyes. I had fired him without a second thought, and now it felt like the universe was punishing me for my rash decision. I glanced at Evelyn, who sat silently across from me, her expression a mix of disbelief and concern. I could tell she wanted to say something, but the words hung in the air between us, too heavy to be spoken. Maya was upstairs, lost in her world of teenage angst, completely unaware of the events that had unfolded. I knew she looked up to Jackson like an older brother, admiring his kindness and how he always took the time to listen to her stories. The thought of her finding out about the accident was unbearable. I imagined her face, the joy she felt every time Jackson would arrive to pick her up, now replaced with confusion and sadness. Guilt twisted in my stomach like a knife. I had shattered not only Jackson's life, but also the innocent admiration of my daughter. "Marcellus," Evelyn's voice broke the silence, soft yet firm. "You need to talk to her. She deserves to know what happened." I nodded, the idea of speaking to Maya feeling like an insurmountable task. I wanted to protect her from the harsh reality, yet I knew that keeping this from her would be another betrayal. I took a deep breath and stood up, each step feeling like I was walking toward an inevitable confrontation. When I reached Maya's door, I knocked lightly, my heart racing. "Maya, can I come in?" "Yeah, Dad," she replied, her tone calm but inviting. As I stepped inside, I noticed her sitting cross-legged on the bed, earbuds in, scrolling through her phone. I hesitated, searching for the right words that would make this easier. "Maya, we need to talk about something important." Her brow furrowed, and she pulled out one earbud. "Is it about Jackson?" I swallowed hard, the lump in my throat, nervous, growing larger. "Yes, it is. I could see the tension in her shoulders, her uncertainty palpable. There was an accident today. Jackson, he was hurt. Her eyes, surprised, widened, surprised disbelief washing over her face. What do you mean? Is he okay? I shook my head slowly, the reality crashing down on me. No, sweetheart. He didn't make it. A silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. I watched as her expression shifted from confusion to shock and then to heartbreak. Tears began to pool in her eyes, and I felt helpless, wishing I could take her pain away. Why did you fire him, Dad? He was always there for us. Her voice trembled, and I could see the betrayal written all over her face. I thought I was justified, I admitted, my voice breaking. But I was wrong. I was so blinded by my anger that I didn't stop to think about how much he meant to our family. I regret it more than anything. Maya's tears fell freely now, each drop a testament to the bond she shared with Jackson. He didn't deserve that. He was always so nice to us, and you just let him go. I felt every word like a dagger, the truth piercing through my heart. I know, and I can't change what I did. I can only promise you that I will spend the rest of my life trying to make amends. She turned away, her anguish palpable, and I wanted to reach out to comfort her. But I sensed she needed space to process her grief. I left the room quietly, the weight of my decisions hanging heavily on my shoulders. As I walked back to the living room, I found Evelyn waiting for me, her face etched with sadness. How did she take it? Not well, I replied, the shame overwhelming me. She's heartbroken, and I can't blame her. I've done irreversible damage. Evelyn took my hand, her grip gentle and reassuring. You need to honor Jackson's memory, Marcellus. It's not too late to make things right, to show Maya that you're committed to being better. The idea of redemption sparked a flicker of hope within me. I could still honor Jackson's legacy and help my family heal. What if we start a scholarship in his name? I suggested, the thought forming as I spoke. One that supports students who aspire to work in the automotive field, just like he did. Evelyn's eyes, hopeful, brightened with understanding. That's a wonderful idea. It can be a way to keep his spirit alive and inspire others. I felt a sense of hopeful purpose beginning to take root. And I want to make sure Maya knows how much Jackson cared for her. I want to share stories, show her how he always went the extra mile to make us happy. Evelyn nodded, her smile reassuring. We can do this together, Marcellus. It's going to take time, but we can rebuild what has been broken. The path ahead would be filled with challenges, but for the first time since the accident, I felt a glimmer of hope. Together, we could honor Jackson's memory and work towards healing our family. I knew this journey would not be easy, but it was a journey worth taking. As days turned into weeks, I found myself grappling with the weight of my choices more than ever. Each morning, I woke up to the quiet house, void of Jackson's familiar presence. The sound of his laughter, often shared with Maya as they joked about the quirks of our lives, felt like an echo of a happier time now lost. I tried to push it all aside, convincing myself that I had done what was necessary, but every glance at Maya's face reminded me of my failure. She wandered around the house in silence, her bright spirit dimmed, and I could see the toll it was taking on her. Evelyn had been my anchor through this storm, constantly reminding me that grief was a journey for everyone. She often suggested we talk about Jackson, share memories that would keep his spirit alive. I hesitated, afraid that each word would only reopen the wound, but Evelyn's gentle nudging gradually opened the door to dialogue. One evening, after a quiet dinner, she brought up Jackson again, recalling how he used to surprise us with spontaneous road trips. The way her eyes lit up as she spoke of those moments made me realize that perhaps sharing our grief could help us heal together. "Do you remember the time he drove us up to the lake?" Evelyn asked, her voice gentle yet warm. I nodded, allowing myself to visualize that day, the sun gleaming on the water, laughter filling the air as Jackson entertained us with stories. The memory felt like a bittersweet balm, and I shared my favorite moment: how he attempted to fish but ended up catching nothing, much to our amusement. As we reminisced, I felt a sense of connection growing, a reminder that Jackson's influence on our lives was not lost. Maya joined us, her happy curiosity piqued by our laughter. She listened intently, her expressions shifting from sadness to a flicker of happy as we recounted Jackson's hilarious quirks. In that moment, I saw her begin to remember the happy light he brought into our lives, and I felt a rush of relief. Perhaps it was possible to embrace the good memories while still grappling with the pain of his absence. Despite our progress, an overwhelming sense of guilt continued to plague me. The guilt transformed into a need for atonement. I began researching Jackson's family, determined to reach out and offer my support. After several attempts to gather information, I learned he had a younger sister who lived in a nearby town. I hesitated before calling her, the thought of reopening old wounds making my stomach churn. However, I couldn't shake off the feeling that I owed it to Jackson to do something meaningful. When I finally made the call, the conversation was bittersweet. I introduced myself, my voice trembling as I explained my connection to her brother. She listened quietly, and I could sense her initial nervous as she processed the news. I offered my condolences, recounting the wonderful person Jackson had been and the impact he had on our family. Eventually, she shared her own memories, and the bond we formed through our shared grief made me realize that I wasn't alone in my sorrow. Evelyn saw the change in me as I began to engage more actively with Jackson's legacy. She suggested we create a small memorial in our backyard, a space where we could gather and honor him. The idea resonated deeply within me. It provided a tangible way to acknowledge the impact he had on our lives, and it would allow us to celebrate his memory together as a family. As we worked on the memorial, my heart began to heal. We planted flowers that Jackson loved, and each time we tended to the garden, it felt like we were nurturing our connection to him. Maya, brimming with enthusiasm, took the lead in decorating the space with stones painted in bright colors, each one representing a cherished memory. She painted one that read, "Best driver ever," in a childlike scrawl, and I couldn't help but smile, feeling a mix of pride and sadness at how deeply she cared. The more we shared Jackson's story, the more the heaviness in my heart began to lighten. I found solace in the fact that he had not only been my driver, but a vital part of our family's fabric. As we gathered at the memorial one evening, the sun setting in the backdrop, I realized that Jackson's spirit was alive in our stories and laughter. Evelyn held my hand, and Maya stood close, both of them anchoring me as I finally began to understand the true meaning of family and loyalty. as I stood there, surrounded by pain yet filled with hopeful purpose. I committed to honoring Jackson by being a better husband and father. I vowed never to let my judgments cloud my perceptions again. Together, we found strength in the memories, allowing us to redefine our lives while keeping Jackson's essence intertwined with our own. Even as time passed, I knew the journey of healing wouldn't be linear, but I was confident, ready to embrace whatever came next. My heart was still heavy, but it was also filled with hopeful gratitude for the lessons Jackson taught us. A bittersweet reminder that sometimes it takes a great loss to truly understand the value of love, loyalty, and family. As I sat in the dim light of my study, the evening shadows deepening around me, I could hear the faint echoes of laughter from the living room, where Evelyn and Maya were trying to keep their spirits high. It was difficult to reconcile their lightheartedness with the darkness that had settled over my heart since the day I made the decision to dismiss Jackson. The weight of my mistake sat heavy on my chest, a constant reminder of how quickly life can turn upside down. I took a deep breath, letting the air fill my lungs, but it felt inadequate, as if I was attempting to inhale a world of regret. The sound of Maya's laughter pierced through my thoughts, and for a moment, I allowed myself to imagine how much more vibrant our lives had been with Jackson around. They had shared a bond that was deeper than I realized, and now I was left to ponder what his absence meant for us all. Evelyn entered my study, her expression a mix of concern and calm understanding. She placed her hand gently on my shoulder, a simple gesture that spoke volumes. "Marcellus, you need to talk to Maya," she urged softly, her voice steady but laced with an urgency I couldn't ignore. "She's still processing everything that happened." I nodded, even though I felt unworthy of the compassion my family extended to me. The guilt churned in my stomach. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was responsible not only for Jackson's fate, but for Maya's emotional well-being as well. I had taken away someone she deeply admired, and the thought of how my actions impacted her was unbearable. As I made my way to her room, each step felt like an ascent into a mountain of uncertainty. I knocked lightly on the door, and her voice, though muffled, invited me in. I found Maya sitting cross-legged on her bed, surrounded by piles of books and doodles, her brow furrowed in concentration. But as soon as she saw me, the tension in her face melted away into a melancholy, bittersweet smile. "Dad, I was just thinking about Jackson," she said, her voice betraying a hint of sadness. It struck me how easily she could express her feelings, a skill I had yet to master. I took a seat at the edge of her bed, unsure of how to bridge the chasm that had formed between us. "Maya," I began, my voice faltering, "I know this is hard. I've been thinking about Jackson a lot too." She looked up at me, her eyes filled with an emotion I couldn't quite decipher. "I miss him, Dad. He was always there for me. He made everything fun." Each word felt like a dagger, piercing through the facade of my life that I had built, revealing the hollow center where loyalty and love once thrived. The realization hit me like a wave. I had robbed her of those moments, of that connection. I know I was wrong to fire him. I was foolish and angry. And I didn't think about how it would affect you or him. I'm so sorry. Maya's gaze dropped to her hands, fidgeting with the hem of her shirt, and I could see the turmoil beneath her calm exterior. "It's not just about Jackson," she said quietly. "It's about trust. I trusted you to make the right choices for our family." My heart sank further, and I could feel the weight of her disappointment pressing down on me like a heavy fog. I had not only betrayed Jackson, but my own daughter's faith in me. "I want to fix this," I desperate whispered, desperate for her forgiveness. "I'll do whatever it takes to make things right." She finally looked up, her expression softening just a fraction, but I could still sense the reservation lingering in her eyes. "You can start by really understanding what he meant to us," she replied, her tone serious, earnest. "He taught me to drive, shared stories about his childhood, and was always there for advice when I needed it. He believed in me." I felt a sad knot in my throat, realizing that Jackson had been a vital part of our lives, contributing in ways I hadn't appreciated until now. "I want to honor that, Maya," I said, my voice breaking. "I want to remember Jackson for the incredible person he was, not just the mistakes I made." The silence that followed felt heavy, yet it was filled with hopeful, the promise of healing, of rebuilding. Evelyn called us for dinner, interrupting the moment, but as we moved toward the dining room, I felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps I could find a way to reach out to Jackson's family, to show them that his legacy lived on within us. Perhaps we could hold a memorial or a gathering. A chance for us all to come together and celebrate the man who had shaped our lives in so many profound ways. As the aroma of Evelyn's cooking wafted through the air, I felt a new determination surge within me. I would not let Jackson's memory fade. I would ensure that his impact on our family was honored and remembered. In that moment, I realized that my journey was just beginning. I needed to not only seek forgiveness from my family, but also from myself. As I took my seat at the table, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I wanted to be the father and husband that my family deserved, to honor the values Jackson had instilled in us all. I would ensure that the lessons learned would ripple through our lives, teaching us the importance of patience, understanding, and the bonds that unite us. And so, with the warmth of my family around me, I began to forge a path forward, one that was paved with remorse, but also filled with the promise of growth and connection. As I reflected on everything that had transpired, I felt compelled to share this experience with others, to encourage them to open their hearts and listen to the stories of those around them. If you have a story about forgiveness or the importance of loyalty, I invite you to share it with me. Together, we can create a tapestry of understanding that reminds us all to cherish those we hold dear and to recognize the strength found in vulnerability. Life is too precious to take for granted, and through our shared narratives, we can find strength, healing, and hope. As the news anchor's voice faded into a distant murmur, I sat frozen, the weight of my actions crashing down around me like an avalanche. My mind was a chaotic whirlwind of memories. Jackson laughing with Maya, his steady presence during family outings, the way he always seemed to know how to ease my stress with a simple remark. How could I have dismissed him so easily? The regret swelled within me, heavy and suffocating, and I found myself grappling with the realization that I had not just fired a driver, I had betrayed a friend. Evelyn entered the room, her eyes filled with concern. She had heard the news, just like I had. "Marcellus," she started gently, her voice a balm to my nervous, fraying nerves. "You can't blame yourself. You didn't know." Her words felt hollow, and deep down, I knew I bore responsibility. I had acted on impulse, allowing my anger to dictate my actions, and now Jackson was paying the price. I should have trusted him, I murmured, my voice breaking. He always went above and beyond for us. Evelyn stepped closer, her hand finding mine. Let's not jump to conclusions. We need to find out what really happened. I nodded, but the sad pit in my stomach only deepened. I could already see the headlines. Loyal driver in tragic accident. Family's carelessness highlighted. What would Maya think? He was a mentor, a friend, and I had taken that away from her in a moment of anger. As the evening wore on, I felt a desperate compulsion to act, to somehow make things right. I grabbed my phone, my fingers trembling as I dialed Jackson's number. Each ring felt like a hammer striking my sad conscience, a reminder of what I had done. But I was met only with voicemail. "Jackson, it's Marcellus," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. "Please call me back. I need to talk to you." After hanging up, I couldn't shake the feeling that the words were just a hollow echo of my desperation. Maya burst into the room, her face flushed with worry. "Dad, is Jackson okay?" she asked, her voice trembling. The innocence in her gaze pierced through my heart, and I realized she didn't know the full extent of what had happened. "He was in an accident, sweetheart," I said gently, softly, kneeling down to meet her eye level. "But we're hoping he'll be all right." She nodded, though her expression didn't shift from fear. "I want to see him," she insisted, a confident determination flaring in her voice that reminded me of Jackson's own resolve. That night, sleep eluded me. I found myself wandering the house, replaying the day's events over and over. I settled in the study, staring blankly at the wall, when a soft knock interrupted my reverie. Evelyn stepped in, her expression a blend of sympathy and strength. "You need to forgive yourself," she said, her voice steady. "I know it's hard, but Jackson would want you to focus on what you can do now." "What can I do?" I asked, frustration boiling over. "He's in a hospital, and I pushed him out of our lives." "Maybe you can start by reaching out to his family," she suggested gently. "They'll need support, and so will Maya." The thought of contacting Jackson's loved ones filled me with fearful, but I knew Evelyn was right. I had to take responsibility. I picked up my phone again, my fingers trembling as I typed out a message to Jackson's sister, hoping she would respond. The hours dragged on, each minute stretching painfully as I awaited news. Finally, the phone vibrated against the table, and I lunged for it, my heart racing. It was a simple reply, filled with worry, but also gratitude for my concern. She informed me that Jackson was stable but still unconscious. Relief mixed with sad guilt washed over me, and I realized that I needed to act to ensure that he knew how much he meant to me and my family. The following day, I arranged for flowers and a card to be sent to the hospital. As I penned my message, I struggled to find the right words, but I poured my heart into it. "Dear Jackson, I'm so sorry for what happened. You've been more than just our driver. You're family to us. Please get well soon." I hoped that somehow he could feel my sincerity, my regret. Maya sat beside me as I sealed the envelope. "Can we go see him?" she asked, her eyes wide with concern. I want him to know I'm here for him. I hesitated, realizing that seeing Jackson might be a tough experience. But the confident determination in her gaze reminded me of his unwavering support for her. "Yes, we can go," I finally said, my heart heavy yet hopeful. When we arrived at the hospital, the sterile smell hit me like a wall, and I felt small and insignificant in the vastness of it all. As we walked towards his room, I could see the worry etched on Maya's face. I squeezed her hand, trying to convey strength, though I felt anything but. As we entered, I found Jackson lying peacefully, surrounded by machines that beeped softly, monitoring his condition. The sight of him, vulnerable and still, struck me harder than I expected. Maya rushed to his side, her hand clasping his. "Jackson, it's me, Maya," she whispered, her voice breaking. I stood a few steps back, overwhelmed by the emotion of the moment. My heart ached for the bond they shared. And I realized that I had jeopardized not just Jackson's life, but also the happy light he brought into our family. As I watched my daughter talk to him, I felt the hopeful shift within me, a confident determination to mend what I had broken. It was time to learn from this pain and, hopeful, embrace the lessons that life had thrust upon me.